الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد، فنظرا لضيق الوقت وسعة الموضوع ندخل فيه من غير مقدمات.
After mentioning the praises of Allah and starting in the name of Allah, then due to the lack of time and a time which is close, then we'll enter into our subject without any introductions.
لعل كثيرا منكم سمع خطبة مدعي الخلافة عندما خطب في الموصل وأعلن الخلافة.
Perhaps many of you heard of the khutbah or the sermon that person who is claiming Khilafah, he gave in Mosul.
عن البغدادي.
Meaning Baghdadi, referring to Baghdadi.
الناس تكلموا عن سواد ملابسه أو عن الساعة التي كان يحملها.
And some of the people, they spoke about his black clothes or the watch that he was wearing.
لكن الحقيقة هو ذكر جملة مهمة في كلامه لعل الأكثرين لم ينتبهوا إليها.
But in reality, he mentioned a very important statement that perhaps most of the people didn't pay attention to.
ماذا قال؟ إن الله خلقنا لتوحيده ولنعبده لنوحده ولنعبده.
He said, indeed Allah has created us in order to establish His Tawheed and to worship Him.
أيها الناس، إن دين الله تبارك وتعالى لا يقام ولا تتحقق هذه الغاية التي من أجلها خلقنا الله إلا بتحكيم شرع الله.
And then he said, O people, this religion for which Allah has created us upon, this religion cannot be actualized without establishing the law, at-tahkim, without governance, Islamic governance.
والتحاكم إليه وإقامة الحدود ولا يكون ذلك إلا ببأس وسلطان.
And then he said, and this cannot be without establishing the prescribed punishments and Islamic governance, and this can never take place without the sultan, without the leader being present, the Khalifa.
إذن البغدادي حسب تصوره لماذا أعلن الخلافة؟
And therefore, Baghdadi, this individual, he mentioned the reason for why he wanted Khilafah.
لأن الله خلقنا لعبادته.
Because he said, the reasons why he fought for Khilafah is because Allah has created us for His worship.
والغاية من هذه العبادة إقامة الدولة.
And the true objective behind this worship is establishing the Khilafah, the Islamic State.
وهذه العبادة لا تتحقق إلا من خلال نيل هذا الهدف والوصول إلى هذه الغاية.
And that this worship and this religion, it can never be actualized and brought into reality without acquiring the Khilafah and without acquiring an Islamic State.
لأن هذا الهدف هو الغاية من الدين كله.
And this objective, the objective of establishing an Islamic State, this is the actual objective behind the whole of the religion.
وبدون الدولة والخلافة فلا معنى للإسلام ولا وجود للإسلام.
And therefore, without the existence of the Khilafah or the Islamic State, then there is no meaning and there is no reality to the existence of Islam.
هذه الفكرة التي أطلقها أو صرح بها البغدادي في خطبته في الموصل.
So this statement or this concept that al-Baghdadi he made clearly in his sermon in Mosul.
هذه هي الفكرة الأساسية للجماعات الإسلامية السياسية.
Then this is the concept upon which the various Islamic political groups they base their activities upon.
مثل داعش والقاعدة وطالبان والإخوان المسلمين وغيرهم.
So whether it's Daesh, ISIS, or Al-Qaeda, or Taliban, or the Muslim Brotherhood, or other than them from the political groups.
هم يرون أن الله بعث الرسل ووضع هذا الدين من أجل إقامة الدولة.
They consider that Allah Azza wa Jal, He created the creation and He only sent the messengers in order for the establishment of the Islamic State.
وهذه الفكرة لم يبتدعها البغدادي، بل هي موجودة في كلام كثير من قيادات ومفكري هذه الجماعات.
And this concept or this thought isn't something which al-Baghdadi invented or came out with or started. Rather, this thought and this concept is something that was present before him. Many of the thinkers and many of the leaders of these groups already have this concept in them.
وكان البغدادي في أول نشأته مع الإخوان المسلمين وتربى على كتب الإخوان المسلمين وكتب سيد قطب والمودودي.
And al-Baghdadi, this individual who has claimed Khilafah for himself, then in the beginning of his life, he was with Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood. And he was cultivated upon the thoughts of the Muslim Brotherhood and the books of the Muslim Brotherhood, specifically the books of Sayyid Qutb and al-Mawdudi.
تعرفون أبا الأعلى المودودي مؤسس الجماعة الإسلامية في الهند وباكستان.
You know of Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi, and he was the founder and the one who established the Jama'ah Islamiyya in Pakistan and India.
يقول في كتابه تجديد الدين: إن الغاية المنشودة من رسالة أنبياء الله في هذه الدنيا.
So he said in his book Tajdeed al-Din, Reviving the Religion, that indeed the core objective behind the sending of the messengers in this world
أن يقيموا فيها الحكومة الإسلامية
is that they should establish the Islamic state, the Islamic governance.
وينفذوا بها ذلك النظام الكامل للحياة الإنسانية الذي جاءوا به من عند الله عز وجل.
And by doing this, they're able to fulfill or execute the complete law when it comes to the life of a human being, and this is what they have come with from Allah.
بل المودودي يفسر كلمة الدين بمعنى الدولة والحكومة.
In fact, al-Mawdudi, he actually explained the meaning of the word deen to be an Islamic state and Islamic governance.
يقول المودودي: معنى الدين في هذا العصر الحكومة تقريبا. يعني
So Mawdudi said that the meaning of ad-deen, when we say deen in Islam, the meaning of deen in this time, it is hukuma, it is governance or an Islamic state.
ومعنى ذلك أن يستسلم الناس أمام قوة جبارة قاهرة ويذعنوا لها. هذه هي الحكومة وهذا هو معنى الدين.
And he said that this means that the people, they submit themselves to this powerful governing state or controlling state. And this is the meaning of ad-deen.
انظروا ولاحظوا كيف يفسر الدين بالحكومة، وهذه الحكومة لابد أن تكون جبارة وقوية وقاهرة حتى يذعن الناس، ولهذا تجدون هذا التصور في سلوك داعش.
So look how he interpreted the word ad-deen. He said ad-deen, it is the hukuma, it is a government. And the government has to be jabbaran, qawiyan, qahiran, i.e. strong and powerful, and has to force the people so that they submit. And this is the thought process, or this is where the likes of Daesh, ISIS have taken this concept from.
وهذه الفكرة كذلك موجودة عند الكاتب الشهير سيد قطب.
And this same concept and this same thinking is found in the famous author, the famous writer Sayyid Qutb.
وهو يقول صراحة أن وجود هذا الدين أي دين الإسلام قد توقف منذ أن سقطت الخلافة، يقصد الخلافة العثمانية.
And he said very clearly that the existence of this religion, the actual existence of this religion, that it has stopped and it has ceased to be since the time of the Khilafah, i.e. the Ottomans.
إذن علينا أن نفهم أن هذه الجماعات المتطرفة جماعات العنف الإرهاب تنطلق من هذه الفكرة الأساسية أن الغاية من الدين إقامة الدولة والحكومة.
So we have to understand that these deviated sects, these various deviated groups and deviated sects, all of them, their activities are based upon this concept. That the focus on violence and terrorism all comes from this concept. The concept that this religion, this deen, it is establishing governance and a government.
وهذا فكر خطير متطرف يؤدي إلى ما ترونه اليوم من القتل وقطع الرؤوس وتدمير البلاد والإفساد في الأرض.
And this thought or this concept is one which is deviated and also extreme. And for this reason it has led to that which you see in the Muslim countries, cutting off the heads, destroying countries. All of this has come from this concept.
في المقابل لابد أن نبين ما هو إذن الفهم الصحيح للدين وللمقصد والغاية منه.
And at the same time we now have to explain that what is the true meaning and the true understanding of the word ad-din and what is the objective behind the religion.
المسلمون اليوم مدارس ومذاهب وبينهم اتجاهات مختلفة.
The Muslims nowadays, they have amongst them various different schools of thought, different madahib, different opinions.
ولكن هؤلاء جميعا ما عدا الجماعات التي لها توجهات سياسية، عامة المسلمين لهم تفسير واضح وبين وسهل للإسلام.
However, all of these various different schools of thoughts and these sects, then all of them, apart from those political Islamic groups, all of them have a very clear, easy understanding of the word ad-din of Islam.
وذلك أن الله سبحانه وتعالى خلقنا لعبادته.
And that is that Allah has created us for His worship.
وأن الله سبحانه وتعالى أرسل الرسل ليدعونا إلى عبادة الله عز وجل ويعلمونا الشريعة الدالة على إقامة هذه العبادة.
And also that Allah has sent His messengers in order to call us and invite us towards the worship of Allah.
وهذه العبادة تتمثل في الصلاة، في الزكاة، في الصيام، في الحج.
And this worship, this concept of worship is shown through praying and through fasting and giving in charity and making hajj.
وكذلك في أصول الإيمان، آمنت بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله، وكذلك أيضا في أصول الواجبات والمحرمات.
And also this worship is shown through the principles, the core principles of Iman, believing in Allah, believing in His messengers, believing in His angels, and so on and so forth. And also it's shown in the obligations that we have to fulfill, and those muharramat, those things which are forbidden that we have to stay away from.
فهذا هو مفهوم الدين، مفهوم الدين ومفهوم العبادة.
So this is the correct, true understanding of the word ad-din, and the correct understanding of the word ibadah, worship.
وهذا الدين الذي هذا هو أساسه وهدفه، هناك جوانب مكملة له.
And then this religion, it has other factors which complete and perfect this religion.
هذه الجوانب المكملة له تتعلق بنظام الأسرة، بنظام المجتمع، بنظام الحكم. فهناك أحكام تفصيلية تتعلق بكل جوانب الحياة.
And then these other branches which complete or perfect Islam, and the other branches, then they have their specific laws. For example, laws regarding families and societies, and so on and so forth. All of these laws are mentioned in detail regarding the other branches of Islam.
وهذه الأحكام التفصيلية ليست مقصد الدين وغايته، ليست الهدف الأساسي من الرسالة المحمدية.
But these other branches of Islam and these other more detailed laws about Islam, then they aren't what is actually intended to be the core of the religion. The core and the main message of Islam isn't regarding these subsidiary matters or these branches which perfect Islam.
ولهذا لما كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعرف بالإسلام ماذا كان يقول؟ يقول بني الإسلام على 5: شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وصيام رمضان وحج البيت لمن استطاع إليه سبيلا.
And for this reason, when the Prophet ﷺ used to define Islam or explain Islam to the people, what did he used to say? He used to say, Islam has been built upon 5. That as-salah, establishing the prayer, and Ramadan, and giving a zakah, and hajj, making pilgrimage for the one who is able to do so.
ولهذا ليس في هذه الأركان الخمسة التي اتفق جميع المسلمين على أن هذه هي أركان الإسلام وأن لا خلاف بين المسلمين حولها، وأن من أنكر شيئا من هذه الأركان الخمسة فهو خارج من دائرة الإسلام. هذه الأركان ليس من ضمنها الجهاد.
So these 5 pillars testifying to the oneness of Allah and the Messenger of the Messenger, and the prayer and zakah and hajj and fasting, these 5 pillars are the core pillars which all of the Muslim Ummah has agreed upon. And whoever disbelieves in these 5 pillars, then this person has disbelieved in Islam and goes out of the fold of Islam. But jihad, for example, is not from these 5 core pillars.
كذلك الخلافة والإمامة والحكم والدولة ليس من هذه الأركان الخمسة.
And also Khilafah, governance, and establishing an Islamic state and having rulership over the people, then these matters are not from these 5 core pillars of Islam.
ذلك لأن الجهاد وقضايا الحكم وما يتعلق بالنظام السياسي والاجتماعي هذه كلها من مكملات الدين، من التفاصيل الموجودة في الدين، وليست هي مقاصد الدين ومقاصد الرسالة أصالة.
And this is because the various laws of Islam with regards to society and individuals and families, all of these are subsidiary matters which are from the completion of Islam. They the further fine details of Islam. But they're not from the maqasid of Islam, they're not from the core objectives of Islam in itself.
ولهذا فإن الدين يقام من غير هذه الأشياء، لأن أصل الدين المطلوب من كل إنسان فباستطاعة كل شخص أن يقيمه في نفسه وفي أسرته وفي من حوله، وإن لم تكن هناك دولة أو سلطة.
And therefore, Islam and the religion can be actualized and established without, for example, the Khilafah or without an Islamic governance. Because the core message and the core objective of religion is that a person individually worships Allah, himself, in his family, and those are around him. And that can be realized and actualized without the need for an Islamic state or a Khilafah.
ومن هنا فإن الله سبحانه وتعالى قد أمرنا جميعا بإقامة الدين.
And from this we say that Allah Azza wa Jal, He has ordered every single one of us to establish the religion.
وهذا الذي أمرنا به هو شيء مستطاع وممكن لكل شخص.
And this establishment of the religion that He has ordered us with is something that every individual can actualize and realize.
قال ربنا سبحانه في سورة الشورى.
Our Lord said in Surah Shura,
شرع لكم من الدين ما وصى به نوحا
that He has legislated for you from the religion that which He legislated for Nuh,
والذي أوحينا إليك
and that which we have revealed to you, I Muhammad,
وما وصينا به إبراهيم وموسى وعيسى.
and that which we advise Ibrahim and Musa and Isa with.
إذن الله سبحانه وتعالى ذكر في هذه الآية أولي العزم من الرسل، الأئمة الكبار من المرسلين، وهم نوح وإبراهيم وموسى وعيسى وخامسهم محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
So in this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentioned the 5 main mighty messengers, Ulul Azm, and they are Nuh and Ibrahim and Musa and Isa, and then the 5th of them is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
فالله سبحانه وتعالى وصاهم جميعا أن يأخذوا بالدين الذي شرعه لهم.
And Allah ordered all of them and advised all of them and counseled them to take the religion and accept the religion which He has legislated for them.
وهذه الوصية تتمثل في قوله وما وصينا به إبراهيم وموسى وعيسى أن أقيموا الدين.
And this obligation is shown in the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we did not reveal to Ibrahim and Musa and Isa except that they should establish the religion.
أن أقيموا الدين ولا تتفرقوا فيه.
That they should establish the religion and they should not become divided over it.
الذين ذكرناهم من الذين يفسرون الدين تفسيرا سياسيا، من الذين انحرفوا في فهم أصل الدين، ماذا يقولون في هذه الآية؟ أن أقيموا الدين، يقولون أي أقيموا الحكومة الإسلامية، أقيموا الدولة الإسلامية.
Those people that we mentioned previously, those people and those groups who have deviated and misunderstood and misrepresent the true meaning and the concept of the word deen, what did they say regarding this ayah? When Allah said, An aqimu ad-deen, that you should establish the religion, when He said to the 5 mighty messengers that you should establish the religion, they said the meaning of establishing the religion is establishing governance and the Islamic government.
وهذا ما صرح به المودودي عندما قال أن أقيموا الدين أي أقيموا الحكومة الإلهية.
And this is something which Maududi clearly mentioned when he was explaining the ayah and Aqimud Deen, I established the religion. He said, establish the divine government or the divine governance.
وهذه لما بدأنا المحاضرة وذكرنا كلام البغدادي، فالبغدادي استخدم نفس اللفظ، قال لا يقام الدين، إقامة الدين. نعم.
And when we opened and introduced this speech, and we mentioned the word of al-Baghdadi, he used these very words. He said, this religion cannot be established.
نعم، فهذا هو مفهومهم، ولكن لو رجعنا إلى علماء الإسلام.
He said that this religion cannot be established except through the establishment of the state. So this is their concept, or their understanding.
لو رجعنا إلى علماء الإسلام، إلى المفسرين للقرآن الكريم عبر العصور وعلى اختلاف المذاهب، فماذا سنجد في تفسير هذه الآية؟
But if we return back to the great scholars of the previous generations and the scholars of tafsir, those who explain the Quran and the hadith, and also even though despite various madhahib and different schools of thought, then how do we find them explaining this ayah, the meaning of which is establish the religion?
سنجد أنهم جميعا يقولون أن معنى أقيموا الدين أي أن تقيم ما تكون به مسلما حسب استطاعتك وقدرتك.
And we find every single one of these scholars saying the meaning of Aqimud Deen, establish the religion, is that be upright and establish everything by which you become a Muslim according to your ability.
وينصون على ذلك في ذلك على أن إقامة الدين بالإيمان بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر.
And they say, for example, that establishing of the religion, Aqimuddin, is by you having belief in Allah and His angels and His books and His messengers and the final day.
والسعي في مكارم الأخلاق والاحتراز من رذائل الأحوال.
And from the establishment of the religion is striving to perfect your manners and staying away from evil or harm.
أبو العالية من أئمة التابعين من أئمة الإسلام الكبار يقول إقامة الدين الإخلاص لله وعبادته لا شريك له.
So for example, Abu al-Aliya, and he was from the Tabi'een, the great Muslim scholars of the 2nd and 3rd century of Islam, he said the meaning of إقامة الدين
الإخلاص لله وعبادته لا شريك له.
It is إخلاص لله. It is having sincerity for Allah and singing out your worship for Allah and not ascribing partners to Allah.
ويقول الإمام مجاهد بن جبر المكي رحمه الله يقول في تفسير هذه الآية لم يبعث نبي إلا أمر بإقامة الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة.
And Mujahid was also from the great early scholars who explained the Quran. He said in explaining the meaning of this ayah, establish the religion, he said that no prophet was sent except with the order to establish the prayer and the zakah.
والإقرار بالله تعالى.
And accepting and believing in Allah.
وطاعته سبحانه.
And showing obedience to Allah.
وذلك إقامة الدين.
And that is the establishment of the religion.
هكذا يقول مجاهد هذا هو إقامة الدين.
This is what Mujahid said. This is the meaning of إقامة الدين, establishing the religion.
ومما يدل على صحة هذا أن هؤلاء الذين ذكرهم الله سبحانه وتعالى أنه أوصى الرسل بإقامة الدين فمن المعلوم أن أكثرهم لم يقم دولة.
And also that which clearly shows the meaning of establishing the religion and that it isn't establishing an Islamic state or an Islamic government is that this order was given to the prophets and the messengers. And most of the prophets and the messengers, they were never able to establish an Islamic state or an Islamic government.
فلاحظوا يا إخواني الآن هذا مثال من آية في سورة الشورى كيف أن الانحراف في تفسير هذه الكلمة وفهم هذه الكلمة يؤدي إلى هذا الانحراف الكبير في فهم الدين كله.
So consider and pay attention, oh my brothers, how in this ayah of Surah Shura, the word establish the religion, just by misunderstanding this word, establish the religion, how it ended up in this great deviation regarding the religion as a whole.
Sorry, Sheikh. Just an announcement for the sisters. Unfortunately, just to let you know, there's CCTV camera upstairs. So those of you who wear niqab, you're advised to keep it on because we're unable to turn the CCTV camera off, I'm afraid. Okay?
نعم فكيف نرد على هذه الفكرة في فهم الإسلام؟
So therefore, how do we refute or clarify this error in the wrong understanding of the word Islam or the concept of Islam?
هناك وجوه كثيرة والمقام لا يتسع لكن سأحاول أن أختصر.
There are many angles by which we can clarify this misconception. However, the time isn't enough for us to mention every single angle, but I will try to summarize.
أول شيء أن نرجع إلى القرآن الكريم وننظر في الغاية من إرسال الرسل.
So the first thing is that we have to return to the Noble Quran. And we have to look at what it mentions regarding the objective of the sending of the messengers.
وما قام عليه دعوتهم.
And also the call and the message upon which the messengers established themselves with.
فسنجد أن الله سبحانه وتعالى أخبرنا أنه أرسل الرسل جميعا لدعوة الناس إلى عبادته.
And we find in the Quran how Allah says that he sent every single messenger to the people with the establishment of at-tawheed, to order people to single out Allah in worship.
وأخبر عن الرسل على وجه التفصيل عن نوح وصالح وهود وشعيب وغيرهم أنهم ماذا قالوا لأقوامهم؟ قالوا اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره.
And he then further detailed and mentioned regarding the various prophets, Salih, Ad, Thamud, and the various prophets, that every single one of them came to their people, and what did they address their people with? U'budullah, worship Allah, ma lakum min ilahin ghayruh, you do not have any other deity apart from Him.
ويقول الله تعالى وما أرسلنا من قبلك من رسول إلا نوحي إليه أنه لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدون.
And Allah said, indeed we have revealed to all of the messengers before you that they should worship Allah alone.
فلن نجد في أخبارهم وفي قصصهم أنهم دعوا الناس إلى إقامة دولة أو كما يقول المودودي وسيد قطب إلى إحداث الانقلاب السياسي.
And therefore we don't find in any of the stories of the prophets, and if you look at their messages, that anyone from amongst them ever called towards a revolution or establishing an Islamic government.
وكما ذكرنا مرارا أنه من خلال قصص الأنبياء والمرسلين نعلم أن الأكثرية الساحقة منهم لم يقيموا دولة ولم يؤسسوا حكومة.
As we have mentioned repeatedly, that by looking at the stories and the events of the various prophets and the messengers, we find that only a very few of them ever established an Islamic state or an Islamic government.
فإذا قلنا أن الغاية من الدين والرسالة إقامة الدولة وإقامة الحكومة فإننا بذلك نكون نطعن في جهود أولئك الرسل عليهم الصلاة والسلام.
And if we say that the objective and the main reason for which the messengers were sent and the books were revealed is that the religion should be established, i.e. the government should be established, then in essence we're insulting and criticizing and making deficient the striving and the struggles of those prophets and messengers.
ونتهمهم بالفشل.
And we're also accusing them of failure.
هذا شيء منطقي، يعني هذه الفكرة ستؤدي إلى هذه النتيجة، هذا شيء لازم بالمنطق الصحيح.
So this is something which is a logical conclusion. Logically we can say that if you say the reason for which those messengers were sent was in order to establish a government and Islamic state, and yet most of them weren't able to do so, then the logical conclusion is that we accuse them of failure.
فما هو جواب الذين يقولون أن الغاية من الدين إقامة الدولة؟ ما هو الجواب؟ إذن هم يعني لابد لهم من جواب في هذا. جوابهم لا يخرج من أحد أمرين.
So what is the answer that they have with regards to this? There are two answers that they give.
الأول أنهم فشلوا فعلا.
So what is our answer? What is the natural result of what they're saying? Either we can say that yes, the prophets and the messengers, it was a failure, they failed in their mission and their objective. This is one of the answers.
وهذا ما صرح به الخميني.
And this is what Khomeini concluded.
الخميني قائد الثورة ما يسمى بالثورة الإسلامية في إيران صرح في خطبة له في 28/6/1980 قال كل نبي من الأنبياء إنما جاء لإقامة العدل.
So this is something which Khomeini, who is the leader of what they used to call the Islamic Revolution of Iran, he mentioned this clearly in a khutbah. On the 28th of the 6th month of 1980 he mentioned
كل نبي من الأنبياء
that every prophet from amongst the prophets
إنما جاء لإقامة العدل.
He was only sent in order to establish justice.
طبعا يقصد بهذا إقامة إيش؟ إقامة الدولة.
And when he's talking about establishing justice, he's referring to the establishment of an Islamic state.
وكان هدفه هو تطبيقه في العالم.
And the objective of every single prophet is that they have to implement this in all of the world.
لكنه لم ينجح.
But لم
ينجح كل الأنبياء لم ينجحوا.
But, and then he said, but most of the prophets or all of the prophets were not able to do so. They weren't successful in doing this.
وحتى خاتم الأنبياء محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
And even the final prophet, the seal of the prophets, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam,
الذي كان قد جاء لإصلاح البشر وتهذيبهم وتطبيق العدالة.
He was the one who was sent in order to rectify the whole of mankind and spread justice amongst the whole of mankind.
فإنه هو أيضا لم يوفق.
But even he wasn't able to do this.
يعني لم يوفق أي فشل.
I.e. that he was a failure, he failed.
لم يوفق. وإن من سينجح بكل معنى الكلمة ويطبق العدالة في جميع أوجاع العالم هو المهدي.
And he said, but the only one who will truly become victorious with this objective and fulfill this objective with the true essence of the word is the Mahdi. He's the only one who will be able to do so.
الذين يحملون الفكر السياسي من المنتسبين لأهل السنة والجماعة لم يصرحوا بأن الأنبياء فشلوا.
Those people, those deviated sects from within the domain of the Sunnis, Ahl Sunnah, not the Shia, those who carry this type of thought, they themselves, they didn't clearly and explicitly say that the prophets and the messengers, they failed in their objective and their mission.
ولكن قالوا كلاما قريبا منه غير صريح.
However, they made statements that are very similar to this in meaning, without actually explicitly mentioning this.
فمثلا يقول المودودي.
As an example, Maududi said,
من أجل ذلك حاول الأنبياء إحداث الانقلاب السياسي. يعني الأنبياء جاءوا من أجل إحداث الانقلاب السياسي.
He said that the objective for which the prophets and the messengers were sent with was an inqilab siyasi, a political revolution. This was the objective for which the prophets were sent with.
طبعا هو يعرف أن الأنبياء لم يقوموا بالانقلاب السياسي أو لم ينجزوا الانقلاب السياسي.
And this is despite him knowing, he knew that the prophets and the messengers, they didn't bring about a political revolution, or that they didn't have, the success wasn't seen in a political revolution.
فبدلا من أن يقول مثل الخميني أنهم فشلوا ماذا قال؟
So instead of him saying, like what Khomeini said, that they were a failure, what did he say instead?
قال اقتصرت جهود بعضهم على تهيئة الأرض كسيدنا إبراهيم عليه الصلاة والسلام.
He said that some of the prophets and messengers, it was enough for them, or their mission was to get the lands ready for later on. So they only came in order to prepare the domain or the field like Ibrahim alayhi salam. He only came in order to prepare things for that which would come after.
وقام بعضهم فعلا بحركة الانقلاب.
And some of the prophets and the messengers, they actually brought about revolutions.
ولكن عملهم قد توقف.
But their action and their efforts, it stopped, it ceased.
دون أن يتحقق تأسيس الحكومة الإلهية.
Yet most of the prophets and the messengers, their actions ceased and they stopped without ever actualizing the Islamic government or the Islamic state.
كسيدنا المسيح عليه الصلاة والسلام.
Like our prophet Masih Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam.
يعني هذه الجملة واضحة أنه يقول أن المسيح فشل في إقامة الدولة وإقامة الحكومة ولكن هو جاء بصيغة لطيفة وجميلة من الكلام.
So this is a clear statement from him showing or intending how the prophets and the messengers, they failed and they were a failure in establishing the Islamic state and the Muslim government. But he said it in a way which was soft and very beautiful. This is how he put it across.
وبعضهم قد وصلوا بهذه الحركة إلى منزل النجاح كسيدنا موسى ومحمد صلى الله وسلم على الأنبياء والرسل أجمعين.
And then Maududi, he carried on saying, he said, however, some of the prophets, they succeeded in this plan, like our Prophet Musa and our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
أيها الإخوة والأخوات، هذه الرؤية وهذه النظرية في تفسير الدين وهذا الفهم للغاية من دعوة الرسل.
Oh brothers and sisters, this theory and this vision and this misunderstanding of the objective of the sending of the prophets and the messengers,
أولا هو تحريف لدعوة الرسل عليهم الصلاة والسلام.
first of all, it's changing the meaning of the mission or the da'wah of the prophets and the messengers.
ثانيا هو كذب عليهم وتغيير وتحريف لسيرتهم وقصصهم وأخبارهم.
Secondly, it's a lie and a fabrication against the messengers and the prophets, changing their stories and what has been mentioned regarding them and their life and their da'wah.
وثالثا اتهام لهم بالفشل.
And then thirdly, it's accusing them and insulting them with saying that they were a failure and they failed in their mission.
والحقيقة التي يبرزها القرآن أن الرسل كلهم جاءوا لغاية واحدة وكلهم نجحوا وأدوا وظيفتهم على أتم وجه.
And the reality is that which has been mentioned in the Quran, that every single one of the prophets and the messengers came with the same objective. And every single one of them was successful in fulfilling this objective.
هم لم يأتوا من أجل الانقلاب السياسي كما يقولون.
They did not come with the objective of causing a political revolution as they claim.
ولم يأتوا من أجل إقامة الدولة.
Neither were the prophets and the messengers sent in order to establish an Islamic government or an Islamic state.
وعندما كان المشركون في مكة يريدون التفاوض مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم، التفاوض معه من أجل أن يترك دعوته، فقالوا له ماذا تريد؟ هل تريد الملك فنجعلك ملكا علينا.
And for this reason, when the Quraysh, when the enemies of the Prophet, when they came to him in order to negotiate with him, in order to stop him and his message of Islam, they said to him, what do you want? What do you want from us? If you want kingdom, then we will make you a king and a ruler over us.
فالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لم يختر الملك لأنه لم يأتي لطلب السلطة والملك وإنما جاء لإقامة الحجة على الناس ودعوتهم إلى عبادة الله وحده لا شريك له.
But the Prophet ﷺ, when he was given this choice of authority and kingship and rulership and statehood, then he didn't accept this. He didn't choose it. And this is because the Prophet ﷺ never came with the objective of establishing a government having authority of the people. Rather, he was sent in order to establish the evidence and in order to call the people towards the worship of Allah.
والآيات في هذا كثيرة جدا لا وقت لدينا لكن نكتفي بآية واحدة من سورة النساء.
And there are many ayat of the Quran that show this, many ayat. We don't have the time to mention all of them, but we will suffice with one from Surah An-Nisa.
يقول ربنا سبحانه بعد أن ذكر عددا من الرسل ثم قال رسلا مبشرين ومنذرين.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after mentioning a number of prophets and messengers, He then said, Rusulan, messengers with glad tidings and a warning.
لئلا يكون للناس على الله حجة بعد الرسل.
So that the people, they will not claim to have an evidence against Allah after the coming of the messengers.
كذلك من أدلة بطلان هذه الدعوة.
And also from the evidences of the falsehood of this claim that they make,
أن القرآن الكريم مليء بالأمر بالتوحيد والعبادة وبأركان الإسلام وبالأخلاق الفاضلة وبيان الحلال والحرام.
That the noble Quran, it is filled with ayat explaining the obligation of at-tawheed and establishing the worship of Allah and having good manners and that which is halal and that which is haram.
لكن لم يرد في القرآن والسنة أي أمر بالسعي لإقامة الدولة وتأسيس الحكومة.
And yet we don't find anything in the Quran or the Sunnah which talks about striving and struggling to establish an Islamic government.
صراحة وأصالة، يعني على وجه صريح، وأن يكون هو المقصد والغاية. لم يرد هذا في القرآن الكريم.
So we don't find in the Quran al-Kareem this message that from the core principles of this religion and from the asal, that from the core tenets of this religion is that we have to establish a Muslim government.
فكيف بعد هذا يجعل هذا الأمر من أصول الدين ومقاصد الرسالة والنبوة؟
And therefore, how is it that we can say that establishing the Islamic State, this is the actual objective of the religion and the messengers?
ولهذا كان من الأصول الفارقة بين أهل السنة والجماعة وغيرهم، خاصة الشيعة الإمامية.
And for this reason, one of the major differences and distinguishing factors between Ahl Sunnah and the various deviated sects, especially the Shia,
أن أهل السنة والجماعة لا يعدون الإمامة والحكم والولاية وإقامة الدولة، لا يعدون الإمامة من أصول الدين.
is that Ahl Sunnah, we do not claim that Imama, a person having authority, and Al-Hukm, governance, and Al-Wilaya, that all of these things are from the core principles of this religion.
فخلافا للشيعة الإمامية الذين يقولون أن أصول الدين أربعة: التوحيد، العدل، النبوة، الإمامة.
And this is in opposition to some of the sects of the Shia Imamiyya. They said that the pillars of this religion are for Tawheed, and then Adl, justice.
التوحيد، العدل، النبوة، الإمامة. الإمامة بمعنى قضية الحكم.
So At-Tawheed, and then justice, and then prophethood, and then Imama. And what they mean by Imama is governance.
أما أهل السنة والجماعة فالإمامة عندهم من فروع الدين وليس من أصول الدين.
And as for Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, then Imama with us, establishing an Islamic state or an Islamic governance, this is from the subsidiary branches of Islam and not from the core principles of Islam.
وفي المقابل أيضا، يعني نحن قلنا أنه لا نجد في الكتاب والسنة أمرا وحثا على إقامة الدولة أو إحداث الانقلاب السياسي كما يقولون.
We mentioned that in the Quran and the Sunnah we don't find this command and this order to establish the authority and establish Islamic governance as they claim.
في المقابل نجد أن الله سبحانه وتعالى يخبرنا أن إقامة الدولة إنما هو وعد منه سبحانه وتعالى.
But in opposition to this, we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us that the establishment of the Islamic government or Islamic state is a promise from Allah.
أي أن الحصول على الملك والسلطة هذا من عند الله عز وجل، منحة من عند الله لعباده الصالحين.
I.e., we find Allah telling us, saying that acquiring authority in the lands and Islamic governance, then this is something which Allah blesses His righteous servants with.
وهذا هذه المنحة وهذا الفضل من الله عز وجل لا ينال ولا يمكن الحصول عليه بمعصيته، لا ينال بالجريمة والقتل وقطع الرؤوس والإفساد في الأرض، وإنما يكون بالإيمان والعمل الصالح.
And this great blessing and this virtue of having Islamic authority and Islamic governance that Allah has promised, then this isn't something which can be acquired through criminal activities, chopping people's heads off, and violence, and disobedience to Allah. Rather, this is acquired by the blessing of Allah through Iman and through righteous actions.
يقول الله سبحانه وتعالى
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said
وعد الله الذين آمنوا منكم وعملوا الصالحات.
that Allah promises those amongst you who have Iman and do righteous deeds
ليستخلفنهم في الأرض
that He will give them authority in the land. He will give you authority in the land.
كما استخلف الذين من قبلهم.
Just as He gave authority to those who came before them.
ولا يمكنن لهم دينهم الذي ارتضى لهم.
And that He will establish for them the religion which He is pleased with.
ولا يبدلنهم من بعد خوفهم أمنا.
And that He will change for them after their fear, safety and security.
كل هذه الأشياء مع ذلك مع أنها وعد من الله سبحانه وتعالى الله سبحانه وتعالى ينبهنا أنها غير مقصودة لذاتها وغير مطلوبة لذاتها بل هي وسيلة.
So all of these things, even though it is a promise from Allah, yet we say that this isn't the initial objective. Rather, this is an avenue or this is the result, but it isn't the initial objective that we work towards.
وسيلة للغاية والمقصد الحقيقي وذلك ما بينه الله في تمام هذه الآية فقال يعبدونني لا يشركون بي شيئا.
Rather, these things, Islamic state, Islamic governance, then this is merely an avenue towards fulfilling the objective. And that objective is to worship Allah alone and that they do not ascribe partners to me, as Allah mentioned in this ayah.
ولهذا ما عدا أصول الإيمان وأركان الإسلام وما عدا العبادات المحضة في الإسلام العبادات الخالصة في الإسلام ستجدون أن كل الأحكام التفصيلية فهي جاءت من أجل تحقيق مصلحة وغاية وهي لهذا هي وسيلة وليست هدفا وغاية في ذاتها.
So everything which is outside of the main pillars of Islam and the main pillars of Iman, then you find that all of these are branches and they are various avenues towards actualizing the initial objective.
من ذلك مثلا الجهاد فالجهاد وسيلة. الجهاد طبعا بمعنى نريد هنا بمعنى القتال لأن المشايخ بيّنوا أن الجهاد له معنى كبير وواسع. نعم.
As an example, jihad. And what we intend here is the jihad of fighting because the mashayikh, they clarified that jihad has many different meanings. But even jihad, then it's only an avenue towards a particular objective.
إنما القتال وسيلة إلى ماذا؟ وسيلة لحماية الدعوة وتبليغ كلمة الله عز وجل ورد العدوان.
So therefore, jihad, the physical jihad of fighting, this is merely an avenue towards protecting the da'wah, an avenue towards repelling oppression, an avenue towards repelling violence.
وهذا صريح في سورة البقرة.
And this is clear in Surah Al-Baqarah.
وقاتلوهم حتى لا تكون فتنة.
Allah said in the Quran, and fight against them in order so there is no fitna, there are no trials and tribulations.
أي حتى لا تمنعوا من حقكم في الدعوة وحقكم في عبادة الله.
Meaning that fight them as long as or such that you are not prevented from your right of calling the people to Islam and worshipping Allah.
وليس المقصود الفتنة أن يعني عدم الحصول على الملك والسلطة.
And the meaning in this ayah isn't that fight them until you have an Islamic state or an Islamic government.
ويكون الدين لله فإن انتهوا فلا عدوان إلا على الظالمين. إذا القتال وسيلة فإن انتهوا فلا عدوان إلا على الظالمين.
And until Allah says, and until the religion is for Allah. And if they stop, meaning if they stop the oppression and the animosity towards you, then there is no animosity towards somebody who stopped the oppression.
أيها الإخوة والأخوات، هذا الموضوع واسع وكبير، وأنا اختصرته اختصارا وذكرت ما يشبه رؤوس نقاط. فالمقصود والخلاصة أن الانحراف في فهم منزلة قضية السياسة والحكم في الإسلام والغلو في هذا ورفع هذه القضية إلى بجعلها من أصول الدين ومن مقاصد النبوة والرسالة، لا شك أنه من أعظم أسباب الغلو والتطرف وما نراه اليوم من تصرفات داعش وغير داعش. فأسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يريني وإياكم الحق حقا ويرزقنا اتباعه، ويريني وإياكم الباطل باطلا ويرزقنا اجتنابه، والحمد لله رب العالمين.
So my brothers and sisters, this topic is very extensive, and because of the time limit I've only mentioned the main points. To summarize, the concept that the reason and the objective behind sending all of the messengers and the prophets and reading of the books and the meaning of ad-Din, that this is Islamic governance or establishing an Islamic state, that this is something which is an error and a misunderstanding. And this is the cause for the extremism and the terrorism that we see from all of these groups, whether it's ISIS or Qaeda or all these other groups. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show me and you the truth as being the truth and give us tawfiq to follow it. And I ask Allah to show me and you falsehood as being falsehood and give us the tawfiq to staying away from it.